Ladies and gentlemen, welcome along to the Tricks of Kaladesh. It's that time of year again, a new set is coming out, so I thought we could have a look at the tricks, the instants, and some counter spells that affect combat in Kaladesh. The idea here is that you'll be a little bit more prepared for your pre-releases, your early drafts, because early on in the set everything's new. There's a lot of fancy stuff. We have energy counters, we have fabricate, we have new mechanics. But one of the things that can give you a little early edge early on in the set is just to know all the things, all the instants that can affect combat when you're deciding, should I block, should I attack. So without further ado, let's jump in. In white, we start off with Acrobatic Maneuver, 2 in a white for an instant that exiles target creature you control, then returns the card to the battlefield under its owner control. You also draw a card. So known as blinking, this is probably mostly going to be used to you when you are attacking into a board of tapped defenders. They're able to untap this one of their defenders with this card and block. Also, of course, this is going to be used with enter the battlefield effects to trigger those as well. And fabricate is going to be interesting with this card in particular. They can blink one of their fabricate cards and they can either choose to make that a bigger blocker or put a 1/1 servo token in or several 1 servo tokens in to block you. So watch out for this one. This one's probably going to come a lot. The fact that it draws you a card means that sometimes you can just use it to cycle. So a trick that I think that will be played kind of a lot, and at 3 mana it's a little bit trickier or easier to hold up than 4. So I think this is going to be something you're going to see a lot of in Limited. Built to Last is a 1 mana pump spell that gives +2/+2 to a creature, and if it's an artifact creature, it gains indestructible until end of turn. I'm always a big fan of really cheap, efficient pump spells, and this is sort of the one for white this turn. +2/+2, and artifact creatures are going to be a little bit more common. We're going to see a lot of vehicles here, which I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about in other videos and in other sort of previews if you haven't already. So vehicles are these artifacts that can become creatures if you crew them by tapping your creatures. But anyway, I'm always happy to play a 1 mana decent pump spell. +2/+2 isn't all that much, and the artifact creature clause sometimes comes into effect. But I think this is good to be aware of, and really easy to keep up. One white mana, of course. Impeccable timing. Look at that. Ajani is coming to Kaladesh. 1 and a white for dealing 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Now this is a typical white removal spell. Really great to take out early attackers or small blockers. Really, of course, the best use of this is a lot of times when to use it in response to one of their pump spells or something like this. Be careful also, of course, that a small boost to their creature can make so that this doesn't actually kill them. But really handy. Going to be seen a lot. This typical white removal spell that it requires the creature to be attacking or blocking in order for it to be targeted. Next up, Inspired Charge and reprint, which gives all your creatures +2/+1 until end of turn. This is going to be interesting in the sort of token strategy, because the fabricate creatures create servos that are 1/1 tokens. The thing about the servos is they don't fly, so you really have to go wide and be able to overwhelm your opponent with plenty of these servo tokens, so that you outnumber them a lot in order for Inspired Charge to work. But yeah, when it comes together, it comes together. And sometimes you just want to shoot this off as a combat trick to survive combat anyway. It's good to know that it doesn't require your creatures to be attacking or anything like that. So in a pinch, you can use this to save a creature in combat or from a removal spell. Pressure Point I just included because it's technically not a combat trick. What this is something you'd usually do before combat, obviously tapping creatures and drawing a card. So just to mention, this exists, but not a combat trick. So let's move on. Skywhaler Shot, 2 and a white for destroy target creature with power 3 or greater, scry 1. So this is a typical sort of white removal spell that looks kind of like a reprisal, except now the power is 3 or greater instead of 4 or greater. You also get to scry, so this is really nice. and it's an uncommon, probably a really good white removal spell here, an instant. Getting to take care of not just a bomb, but just any slightly large creature and scrying at instant speed for 3 mana is pretty awesome. It's good that it's an uncommon, because this one's going to be a scary card and a good pick. Moving on to blue, we start off with a flash enchantment. So it's an enchantment that you can cast in the middle of combat, which is why it's included in this list. Ether Meltdown, enchant creature or vehicle. Note, you can enchant vehicles even though they're not creatures with this card. You get some energy, so there's going to be a lot of synergy with energy, and we'll have to see how that works out. I think there was if you watched any of that PAX panels and talk about energy, they really said that you can sort of theorize about how energy will affect the gameplay, but you won't really fully get it until you play with it. So I won't say much about it, except it's really interesting to see all the different cards and card types that actually give you energy throughout the game. But this is a typical blue combat effect. The target permanent gets -4, -0, which of course can be critical in combat. But enough about that. We got to either trade wins, a reprint to return target permanent you control and target permanent you don't control to their owner's hands. So it's a kind of funny bounce, and a lot of times these things that require you to bounce one of your things and in order to bounce one of their things is not too bad. But the good thing here is it says target permanent, and so you can bounce lands. So you'll always probably be able to bounce something if you have to, because you can bounce one of your lands if you need to. And then of course you can reset enter the battlefield triggers, or something like this. So interesting bounce card, not as straightforward as they usually are, and not something you want to maybe use as easily, because the tempo, the effect this has is a bit different from how these bounce cards usually work. But it's going to be interesting to see how this can best be used. But yes, it is permanent, not non-land permanent. You can also bounce your opponent's lands with this card. Dramatic Reversal, 1 and a blue for untap all non-land permanents you control. Now this is this typical blue trick, which, you know, they attack with everything. Seems like you got a clear attack, but they're holding 2 mana up. What are you going to do? Of course, purely defensive, really trick, so might not be so great, and it's this effect isn't like a blowout very often, but the possibility of your opponent suddenly untapping all their creatures is a kind of scary thought, something you want to be aware of. Finally, in blue, we don't have so many combat tricks here. We're going to have a section on counter spells later on in the video. Select for inspection is 1 blue for an instant. That simply returns a tapped creature to its owner's hand. It can be yours or it can be an attacker. You get to scry 1. So yeah, I mean, bouncing a big attacker and scrying one is pretty neat. This is also of course, you can use it defensively to save one of your attacking creatures from a removal spell or from something. So it's a pretty interesting one, and the fact that it scries 1 adds to the value, and just 1 blue means it's pretty effective. It's pretty narrow, sure. You can't remove a blocker with this, or at least not with this alone. But paying 1 mana on a card to have them reinvest a lot for an expensive attacker could be worth it. It's an iffy thing, but it's good to know it exists. And Essence Extraction, 1 and 2 black for deal 3 damage to target creature, and you deal 3 life. There's 2 things I don't like about this card. One is that's double black, so it's not easy to splash, and usually these cards become way better if you can just easily cast them on turn 3 or something like that. The other thing is you can't target a player with it, so you can't put in the last 3 damage. But still, 3 damage is a decent removal spell, and gaining 3 life is not nothing. But it's like when I saw a lot of this, like the double black and things, I was like, but you'll play it. But just keep in mind, there was in the previous set, 1 and 2 black gave you murder for as an instant at uncommon. So you know that's something for you to compare it to. Make obsolete, 2 and a black for an instant. Creatures your opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. And at first sight, you can probably think, well, this is sort of like a token hoser card. But I mean, you main deck this card because think about it. Yes, you can just wipe off the board with of tokens and things, but this is a nightmare in combat. I mean, your opponent who plays black attacks with loads of things, and suddenly you're like, oh wait, there's make obsolete. Suddenly you're wondering, is this going to be a complete blowout? If everything I block with gets -1/-1, this card's going to mess with combat math a lot, and it's not just something you put in to hose tokens, but a real sort of mean card that can make it really difficult to block. That being said, -1/-1 isn't the sort of greatest effect, but the fact that it's only affecting opponent's creatures means that you can almost always create a situation where this will get value for you. Rush of Vitality, 1 and a black for +1/+0, which doesn't sound that great, but the big deal here is lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. And this is this kind of black combat trick that I've come to like in many sets, which is this question of like a trade suddenly becomes that well, you don't trade it. A trade still becomes a trade. If you attack with a creature and they block with a creature, it's still 1-for-1 if you play this and kill their creature. But this is such a good life insurance thing here. This lifelink and indestructible are both these kind of things that really help you stay in there in case things don't really go as planned. If this resolves, in almost any case, your creature will still stay alive, and you'll get a few life points to keep you in the game. And every now and then you'll blow them out by double block when they double block, and you're able to take them 2 out. The only +1 here is one that makes this probably something you'll never really get that much more than 1-for-1. But the fact that you can sometimes trade up, or you can keep your creature alive when the board is at parity, and you get just a little bit more life, means that this is a very versatile and a decent trick that you'll want to have. It just allows you to get extra value to determine, give you a little more agency in combat situation to determine how things are gonna go out. So 1 and a black for a decent card, not super, but something that's gonna be useful to have when you need it. Subtle Strike. Choose one or both. The target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, or put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And this is just 1 and a black. There was this was it Escalate card? What was it called in the last set? Which gave either you could do -1/-1 to a creature for 1, or +1/+1 to a creature for 1, or then you can escalate for 2, and you get I think it was 2 and a black, and you could get both. This is just better. You can for just 1 and a black, you can do both -1/-1 until end of turn to a creature, and a +1/+1 counter to another creature. So not only is it cheaper to do both, you also get a permanent bonus to the creature you have. I really like this card because a lot of time that was something Malevolence, wasn't it? In the previous set, yeah, you'd play that, and it was decent, and you could almost always find a place for it to use it profitably. This gives you a permanent boost to your creature, so I think it's good. Decent little trick. Not a major thing. I think it's good at a common for 1 and a black. But let's move on. Tidy Conclusion hails back to kind of like a Flesh to Dust type effect. 3 and 2 black for destroy target creature, just any creature, and you gain 1 life for each artifact you control. Now I think it was Flesh to Dust that was something like a spell mastery card that also killed any creature at instant for 5 mana, and then you gain 2 life if you had spell mastery or something like that. This will gain you a few lives more often than not, but I mean, this is what we've come to expect from the black common removal spell. Last set we had Certain Death at 6 mana. It was easily splashable because it was 5 and a black. That was a sorcery. This is 2 black and 3 any mana, and but you can just destroy anything. So if you're black, you don't mind having some cards like this, but yeah, this is what sort of common black removal is like these days. I don't know what it means that Certain Death was playable in the last format, and now we get this a little bit cheaper at an instant. Perhaps that tells us that this format is faster. I don't know. I'm just going to tell you that this card exists here, and you should be aware of it. Red. Build to Smash. An instant for 1 red. Target attacking creature gets +3/+3. If it's an artifact, it gets trample on the end of turn. I love this card. It's so red. I can imagine just there are going to be some games ending where you go in sort of like an all-in red strategy, and you've been attacking as you do as red, and you set up an attack, and your opponent thinks about it and blocks, and you ask with that typical content grin in your face, "That's how you block? Anything else?" And they're like, "Nope." And then you just go build to smash. They're okay. And then you say build to smash, +9/+9 and trample. Is that game? Yeah, it's not gonna happen too often. But I think many of you did the combination with the trample trick plus the double strike trick before, so you know that this kind of things can be set up, and if you start picking them early enough, you can get a whole bunch of build to smash, and you don't want to get maybe too many. But on the other hand, at 1 red for 3 power and possible trample, building up to a sort of lethal turn, especially if you can get other pump effects as well, is not that difficult. And specifically early on in the format, surprising someone with a super aggressive pump like this is not difficult to do. Anyway, build to smash. One of my favorite combat tricks here, gonna be early on. Chandra's Pyrohelix is this versatile removal spell that also can deal damage to face. 1 on the red for 2 damage, divided as you choose, and 1 target and players. So 2 damage for 2 mana. It's kind of common currency these days. We're used to being able to do that. Being able to split up the damage can be really, really useful in some cases, especially in combat with if there are a lot of low toughness creatures around, or in response to combat tricks and so on. Basic stuff. Harnessed Lightning is interesting. For 1 on a red, you can choose target creature, and then you get 3 energy counters. Then you can pay any amount of that, so you get to choose how many you use. So you make sure this means that you have, even if you just want to kill 1 toughness creature, you still gain something out of the other energy, because you get to keep that other energy. And if you have energy from somewhere else, you get to kill a creature that can have 4 or 5 or even more toughness. Now, the thing about this card is it's not Lightning Strike, and as you can see, choose target creature. This card would be absolutely bonkers if it also targeted players, and I guess that's probably why they didn't allow that to happen. At uncommon, this is still probably really good and efficient removal, because it seems like energy or ether is flowing free on Kaladesh, and I would imagine that if you want to, and if you draft or build a dedicated energy deck, you will have more than 3 energy handies, which means that this becomes a premium removal spell for creatures. Incendiary Sabotage is interesting. 2 and 2 red. You also need to sacrifice an artifact. In this set, I don't think that'll be difficult. And then it'll deal 3 damage to each creature. So it's kind of a red wipe-ish type of thing. I don't yet know. I haven't had a look. Someone's probably going to be analyzing the toughness. What's sort of like the magical toughness in this set? Is 3 going to be one that kills most creatures, or what? If it's going to be a little bit of a faster set, maybe it will. Maybe 3 damage is enough to sort of take out most creatures. You'll notice that it's not just creatures without flying; it's everything. So this is probably a very close red board wipe. And at instant, this should be fairly easy to set up to wipe the board at the end of the opponent's turn, and then play some nasty stuff to capitalize on that. But we'll see what's up next. Welding Sparks, 2 and a red for deal X damage to target creature, where X is 3 plus the number of artifacts you control. Again, just target creature. Absolutely bonkers if this was not, but just dealing 3 damage to a creature for 3 mana is on par for what we're used to having instant removal in red these days. Good removal spell. You'll often have an artifact. You can almost think that this is many times deal 4, but already at deal 3, if we will probably take out most of the threats in the set, and it's an instant still, so it's very beneficial. We have quite a lot of efficient removal here. So what does that say about the set? I don't know. There is a rare combat trick as well, but I'll come back to that later in the video. In green, we have 2 and a green for destroy target artifact or enchantment. You gain 2 life. Now, a lot of time a sideboard card, in sealed, maybe main board. Depends on how prevalent artifacts are. I would guess that this is something you main more often than not in this set because of the artifact theme. Not much else to say there. Then we have a efficient 1-mana removal spell again. Green, 1 green for target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until end of turn. What's to say? This is really efficient. It saves your creature from any targeted removal. And many times also other things, just giving the extra 2 toughness and then getting 2 power in. This is super efficient removal. Not removal, but super efficient combat that most of the time will keep your creature alive. At uncommon, interestingly, you won't see too many of these around, but definitely such a versatile. It's so easy to include, so easy to keep up. A great way to protect your bombs or important creatures. Now, what the fog, you might ask yourself when you see this. Commencement of festivities is an interesting fog effect for 1 and a green. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to players this turn. So, fog effects in general are considered pretty bad. I suppose this is something where you can just play this and like triple block one of the attackers that you really want dead, and then you can sort of completely ignore the lethal damage or something like this. Is what I feel generally, but you know, it's something that is kind of a combat trick, so that's why it's here. Ornamental Courage, 1 green for untapped target creature, +1/+3 until end of turn. This is one of these typical green combat tricks that we see every so often that untaps a creature. What usually makes these creatures, these kinds of spells really good is that it tends to untap and give reach. This does not. +1 and +3 means that whatever you do block with probably will stay alive, but just getting 1 more power means that it's not that easy to create a blowout situation where you can trade up and take out a much larger creature. As I said already, it doesn't give reach, so you won't be able to surprise flying attacks. It's decent, and I suppose you'll play it. But I'm not impressed. But just so you know, for 1 green, people can do this, and they will. So, down to the rare trick I was talking about. Fateful Showdown shows us a little bit of a climax of the Kaladesh story with P and LR facing off Tesseract in some kind of duel. That's going to be interesting to read about, but let's see what the card does. For 2 and 2 red, Fateful Showdown deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of cards in your hand. Now, okay, that's cool. So we can guess maybe at a 4 we have 3 or 4 cards in hand, maybe, unless we're like having a card draw blue-red deck of some kind. Okay, so 4 damage to target creature or player for 4 mana. That's cool. Then you have to discard all the cards in your hand. Oh, but then you draw that many cards. Ooh. Okay, so this is kind of like oh, I'm flooding out. Oh dear. I draw Fateful Showdown. I kill your best creature and draw 4 cards. So neat. Weird card, but it's a rare, so you won't see this very much. It's going to be funny to see how well this plays out. Usually, at least, you'll be able to inflict some damage. It's a removal spell that also sort of filters your hand. Interesting card. There's also one gold card instant that I want to bring up, or actually not want to bring up. I'm bringing up all of them, but there's only one that is an instant. And that is this one. 1 and black and red for destroy target creature. If you control an artifact, unlicensed disintegration deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. This is pretty neat. Now it has all the drawbacks of a gold card usually, meaning that you don't want to pick perhaps them early or commit to colors. But this is a really, really good effect. Just destroying a creature at instant, possibly giving 3 damage to the controller, is really, really powerful. So, but yeah, it requires then that you play black and red. But if you do, you'll be very, very happy to run this thing. Finally, let's have a look at the counter spells of the format. There's a few of them, and we'll just quickly go through them before we close up the video. First one, Ceremonious Rejection. 1 blue for counter target colorless spell. I'm sure people are going to be talking about how, oh, this counters Eldrazi and all that kind of stuff. But that's constructed. We don't care about constructed. We care about limited. There are going to be a lot of artifacts in this set, but how badly you want to spend a card on countering something like that depends on what kind of game-breaking artifacts they have. If they have something really, really, really tough to deal with, then okay, sure. One thing to keep in mind is if I don't misremember, some of the artifacts in this set are colored. They're actually colored, and it doesn't say anything like this. It's not like devoid, so I'm not sure how great this is. But anyway, it's there. Disappearing Act is 1 to 2 blue for a counterspell, so it's almost like cancel, but it has this weird extra clause. You have to return a permanent you control to your hand to cast it, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. A lot of times, sometimes you want to do that, but then will you want to do it at the same time you counter a spell? You can always cast this and return a land. But in what situation is that good for you? I don't know. So it's a little bit of a weird, a little bit worse cancel, and I wonder why, if it'll be good enough to play with that. Of course, the old things about resetting Enter the Battlefield effects and all that kind of stuff holds true. So maybe this will combo well with Fabricate cards or something. But anyway, it is an interesting thing to put in a counterspell, because counterspells you don't really always choose when you're going to do that, because you need to counterspells when you have to, and trying to combine other effects with that is a tricky sort of setup cost to do. Failed Inspection, 2 and 2 blue for counters target spell, draw a card and discard a card. So this is basic. I can get behind this kinda ish. Maybe one in a deck. You just counter anything and then you get to loot. Actually, you kind of have to loot. So, yeah, all right. You sealed. Probably you run this sometimes. Have this in. That's an effect that's easy to combine with a counter type. If you compare it to the Disappearing Act, looting is like, sure, it doesn't really cost you anything. At worst, if you have an empty hand, you just put a card in your graveyard and it's fine. It's not difficult to combine a looting effect with a countering effect, whereas the whole return of permanent can sometimes be really bad for you. Insidious Will then is a rare, so you won't be seeing this very much, and one of its modes is just 2 and 2 blue counter target spell. Other things that can happen here are kind of funny. It has the sort of diversity of, yeah, sure, you can counter anything, so you can always think of it's at least going to counter something. But then there's sometimes you can really get fun things to happen here, because you can redirect spells, or then you can copy spells, your own or your opponent's. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's a funny thing, and now you know it exists, but it's a rare, so you won't see it very often. Revolutionary Rebuff, 2 mana, so kind of like a mana leak. Counters target non-artifact spells, so kind of worse than a mana leak, unless its controller pays 2, so again kind of worse than a mana leak. So it's like kind of mana leak, but not always mana leak. But the fact that it hits all non-artifact spells means that there's quite a large range for it. You'll always be able to find a target for it, this is it's decent. It's interesting. It's an interesting attempt to see what kind of power level counterspell should have. So nerfed mana leak, it does what it needs to do sometimes, but it's definitely no mana leak. But that's it. Those are the tricks and the counter spells for Kaladesh. I hope you enjoyed the video. If I've missed something, you feel free to leave a comment or leave a like if you liked it. Otherwise, good luck in your pre-releases, good luck in your early drafts, and good luck with everything. Enjoy Kaladesh. Looks like an awesome set. And